Good morning. Welcome home to our new members. We're so happy that you are here with us in our community. We love our community. Mind over matter. This month we are minding the mind because we teach the science of mind, of course. We're minding the mind because the real estate between our ears is very, very important real estate. Of course, our mind is not anywhere physical, but our brain that translates our mind is right up here. Diane shared a quote last Sunday from Charles Fillmore's book, Atom Smashing Power of Mind, and it bears repeating today. So here it is. To be ignorant of mind and its laws is to be a child playing with fire, or a man manipulating powerful chemicals without knowing the relationship between those chemicals. This is universally true, and all who are not learning about mind are in like danger, because all are dealing with the great cause from which springs forth all the conditions that appear in the lives of men and women. Mind is the one reservoir from which we draw all that we make up into our world, and it is through the laws of mind that we form our lives. That's why we're spending this entire month on this topic, and today we're going to look at the phrase mind over matter. It's a common phrase, and it's used to speak of the creative nature of our minds, and of course our minds are creative. But is mind over matter? Is that accurate? Is mind really over matter? What do you think? Yes. Well, I say the answer to that is actually no. So if it isn't mind over matter, what is it? It's mind as matter. Matter as mind. David did that wonderful reading from Emma Curtis Hopkins, who we're studying in Reverend Franklin's Roots class. And she believes that there is no matter, that all is spirit. Matter is only spirit in form. So, mind as matter, matter as mind. Or, we've all heard someone say, if we don't mind, it doesn't matter, right? Well, that's true too. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. We can't demonstrate any matter that we don't create in mind first. So if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That was my little addition to the philosophy of mind over matter. So here's just a few of very many passages from our New Thought leaders on this topic. In the Edinburgh lectures, Thomas Troward said that the universal mind is the creative power throughout nature, and as the originating power, it must give rise to various forms. And in the Basic Ideas of the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote that there is but one mind. It is omnipresent. It's all that there is. Everything, visible and invisible, is but a manifestation of this one mind, the result of his creative action and the becoming of that which it creates. And in Talks on Truth, Charles Fillmore wrote that mind is not a thing, mind is. It is that which through orderly process produces the thing. This orderly process we have learned by observation is from an invisible center to a visible circumstance. So if anywhere in the universe you behold a form, you may know that within that form there is a potential center from which spring all its qualities. That is the seed, the idea, the center. So it's not, and it never will be, mind over matter, but matter as mind. Whether that is the mind in the macrocosm, the big picture, God, or mind in the microcosm, the little picture, the individual expression. So here's an example of it in both of those. 11-year-old Angela was stricken with a debilitating disease involving her nervous system, and she was unable to walk, and her movement was restricted in many other ways as well. And the doctors didn't hold out much hope for her ever recovering from this illness. They predicted that she'd spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair, and they said that few, if any, were ever able to walk again after contracting this disease. But this little girl was undaunted. There, lying in her hospital bed, she vowed to anyone that would listen that she was definitely going to walk again someday. So they transferred her to a specialized rehabilitation hospital in the San Francisco Bay Area. And whatever therapies could be applied to her case, they tried. The therapists were all charmed by her undefeatable spirit, so they taught her about imaging, about seeing herself walking. They thought if it would do nothing else, at least it would give her hope and something positive to do in the long waking hours in her bed. Well, Angela would work as hard as she could as possible in her physical therapy, in whirlpools and exercise sessions, but she worked just as hard lying in her bed, faithfully doing her imaging, visualizing herself, moving, moving, moving. Then one day, as she was putting every ounce of energy she had into imagining her legs moving again, a miracle happened. Her legs didn't move, but the bed did. In fact, it began to move all around the room. She screamed out, "Look what I'm doing! Look, look, look! I can do it! I can move! I'm moving!" Now, it seems at that very moment that everything else in the room was moving also. People were screaming and running for cover. Equipment was falling and glass was breaking. You see, it was the 1989 earthquake in the Bay Area. But don't tell that to Angela. She's convinced she did it. And only a few years after that incident, she was back in school on her own two legs. Because anyone who can shake the earth between San Francisco and Oakland can certainly conquer some silly little disease, can't they? Yeah. Ernest Holmes wrote that the universal creative mind is the same mind you and I are using now. And it's because of the unity of this mind, this oneness, the indestructibility, the eternality, the changelessness of this mind, that we may be certain that our thought acts in and through this mind in accord with the immutable law of cause and effect. Therefore, it follows that if we set up a vibrating point at the center of our own thought, receptive to that which is good, to that which is beautiful, to that which is true, we shall irresistibly be attracting that condition into our environment. And that's exactly what Angela did. And that's a true story, by the way. It was in the first Chicken Soup of the Soul book by Jack Canfield, who, incidentally, was our author of the month last month in his book, Principles of Success. So, thoughts are things. They don't become things, they are things. Not physical things, but what Troward calls a spiritual prototype, and Holmes calls a mental equivalent, which we may call a seed, which is an idea in mind. That idea in mind creates energy. It is energy. Calvin Lehue, who is a metaphysician here in the Middle Tennessee, he was here long before there was any science of mind in Nashville. And he was the former owner of the factory in Franklin. He used these principles to be very, very successful in business. Well, I went to one of his metaphysical meetings a while back, and because I had been looking around my house for a poster that he made many years ago. And I knew I had a copy, but I couldn't find it. And I mentioned it to him at that meeting, and he says, "Funny you should ask that. I just printed up some more of those." So I took a couple, and you'll see them in the women's bathroom and the men's bathroom, if you don't remember. They say, "Mind your mind, energy follows thought." And that's what we're talking about. Mind your mind, energy follows thought. The tendency of our thought is creative energy and will take form in our lives. So Holmes tells us in one of the shortest yet most powerful lines in the science of mind that trained thought is more powerful than untrained thought. So what does that tell you? We want to train our thought, don't we? Yes. Right. So how do we train our thought to be more powerful? Well, how do we train our body to become more powerful, to become stronger? Well, let's see. Let's start. Nutrition, fuel. We can lift something that's heavier than we can comfortably lift. Repetition. We don't go to the gym just once, do you? Use the visible progress that you've made to motivate you to keep going. We do that. Get a personal trainer. You can do that. So how does that translate to training your mind to be more powerful? Okay, nutrition. Fuel your mind with only what you want. Stand guard to the portal of your mind, as Emerson reminds us. Choose to think only what you want to think. Of course, garbage in, garbage out, right? So what do you want to take in to your mind? Ernest Holmes wrote that we must come to believe that at the center of our lives there is a wholeness, and we should think of the mind as the door through which it enters. Therefore, we should be very careful to guard what comes into our mind from the opinion of others and to regulate what comes into it from any source. Lift that which is heavier than you can comfortably lift. Strengthen your mind with concepts you might not readily think. We have to stretch ourselves, like the concept that good really is all there is, like the concept that love really is the answer, like the concept that we really are responsible for our own experiences, as we talked about last month in using Jack Canfield's book, Principles for Success. We are 100% responsible for our experience of life. So what we do is we build mental muscle by doing things that are challenging, that are out of our comfort zone. Spiritual heavy lifting. Repetition. Do your spiritual reading, meditation. Take classes. Come to church on a regular basis. Stay involved here. Be a part of the community, because that's how we support each other. We're around like minds, and so that we can repeat those, what we're putting into our minds, and support each other. Spiritual reading, meditation, classes. We can't just, I get it on Sunday and then go through the rest of the week and go, oh, I got it. Well, I've found that I don't have it unless I keep knowing it, learning about it, expanding it. So the repetition is what builds strength of thought. And, okay, watch and get motivated by the results. Pay attention to the coincidences that occur in your life. Be fueled and inspired by them. And this got me to thinking about my life and coming up with some coincidences, or what's that other word for coincidences? Synchronicity. That's the one I couldn't think of. And the synchronicity in my life. And I went back to an instance, a very important part of my life, where I had just recovered from alcohol and got into a 12-step program and changed my evil ways. And I had a song that was partly written, and I had gotten together with an old school friend that I had started my first bands in my little town in Colorado with, and we finished that song, and I was sure I had really happened across a really good idea, and we had a hit song. So we made a demo of it. And we had a gig coming up where we were opening for the Everly Brothers at a theater in Denver. And so we had that demo, and I was going to give it to Don Everly because this was an Everly Brothers song. I thought it was perfect for them. So we got there, and they brought their own opening act with them, so we didn't open for them. But I did get to meet them, and I did get to pass that tape to Don Everly. And then after that, not long after that, within the next year, was when I moved to Nashville. I never did hear from Don Everly, but I came to Nashville. Now, I had an intention for moving here, and it's kind of one of those stories of God. I know what, God knows how. And that's where our coincidences and our synchronicities pop up. And I got here to Nashville, and I'd taken this tape with this song around Nashville and played it for many people. And I was walking down 17th at Music, or 16th Avenue in Music Row, and all of a sudden this car pulls up beside me, and somebody says, "Hey, Michael, how you doing?" And I look over, and it's Chris Hillman, who used to be a member of the Byrds back in the 60s, the Flying Burrito Brothers, and he had lived in Boulder, or outside of Boulder, for a few years in the 70s, and I'd gotten to know him just a little bit. And I hadn't seen him for a long time, and with him was his singing partner, Herb Peterson. And so anyway, we got together and went to a restaurant and sat around and talked for a while. And he said, "Well, I think we're getting a deal with Curb Records, Herb and I. We've started a band." And as we left that day, he says, "Do you have any songs?" And so I said, "Yeah, I'll send you some songs." And so he went back to California, was where he lives. And not 2 or 3, it was 3 or 4 months later, I got a call from Chris. And he said, "You know, I broke my leg in a bicycle accident, and I was laid up for 6 weeks. And so I listened to your tape." You know how it is in the music business. You know, synchronicity, you know. I mean, I know what, God knows how. He breaks his leg in a bicycle accident. So he will listen to my tape. And he says, "Man, I really like that one song, you know." I said, "I want to do it in this band, and I think we're going to get a deal, you know." And he said, "You should have given it to Don Everly." I said, "I did, and I never heard of him." I said, "It's yours. Do it." And so, you know, to finish the story out, you know, it became a #1 hit. And to me, that just tells me that, you know, when we start working our intentions and doing our mental work, that we have to pay attention to these coincidences, the synchronicities that pop up, and they give us, you know, they give us more inspiration and more fuel to keep going. So the last idea for strengthening your mind is to get a trainer. Now, how would we do this in our teaching? Get your own personal practitioner. Everyone should have one. Do you have one? Well, you get to pick one. At the end of the service, you'll see all of them standing up here. So pick your practitioner. This person is going to help you, you know. Mind's always at work, always creating, always forming itself into matter, whether it's creating through our lives that which we desire depends on how we are using our peace of mind. That's P-I-E-C-E. which we're actually using the whole thing because there are no pieces, because all is present everywhere all the time. Einstein once said that everything is energy, and that is all there is to it. I like that. Everything is energy, and that is all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you can't help but get that reality. It can be no other way. That is not philosophy, it's physics. And I love what Marianne Morrissey says in the Prosperity Plus courses, which we have one starting July 2nd with our practitioner Elaine Benson. And there's a sign-up sheet in the bookstore. And Mary Morrissey says that if you want, she takes the idea of frequency and puts it into the terms of radio. She says, if you want to get NPR on your radio, you've got to dial into the frequency 90.3. And that's the same in our lives. If we want the frequency of love, we have to dial into it. If we want the frequency of success, we have to dial into it. Because everything is energy and everything is a frequency. And so, it's not philosophy, this is science. Science of mind, it's physics. And even though it's physics, not philosophy, it can still be pretty mind-blowingly awesome, can it? I want to leave you with a story about the awesome nature of God. I think I've shared it in the past, but it's really good, so I want to share it again. There was a young boy sitting on a park bench with one hand resting on an open Bible, and he was loudly exclaiming his praise for God. Hallelujah, hallelujah, God is so great. He yelled without worrying whether anyone would hear him. And along came a man who had recently completed some studies at a local university, and feeling himself very enlightened in the ways of truth and very eager to show his enlightenment, he asked the boy about his source of joy. The boy replied with a bright laugh, "Do you have any idea how awesome God is? I just read that God opened up the waters of the Red Sea and led the whole nation of Israel right through the middle." The enlightened man laughed lightly, sat down next to the boy, and began to try to open the boy's eyes to the realities behind the miracles of the Bible. Well, that can be very easily explained. Modern scholarship has shown that the Red Sea in that area was only 10 inches deep at that time. So it was no problem for the Israelites to wade across. The boy was stumped. His eyes wandered back from the man down to his Bible lying open in his lap. The man was content that he had enlightened a poor, naive young person to the finer points of scientific insight. And so he turned to go. And scarcely had he taken 2 steps when the boy began to rejoice and praise louder than before. And the man turned to ask the reason for the boy's resumed jubilation. "Wow!" exclaimed the boy. "God is greater than I thought. Not only did he lead the nation of Israel through the Red Sea, he topped it off by drowning the whole Egyptian army in 10 inches of water." Woo. Awesome power. It is an awesome power. So are you ready to mind your mind? Are you ready to train your thought and create the awesome life that you want to live? All right, let's do it. So it is.